All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Anthro Tech webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about continuous discovery. So in this session, you are going to hear lots of practical insights on how ongoing user research helps product teams move faster and smarter. Before we dive into our content, we would love to hear who is in the room today. So let's chat and feel free to drop your company name in the chat right now. I see some familiar names. Go ahead and let us know what company you're with. All right. Let's go ahead and meet our crew and panelists for today. Delighted to introduce you to this panel. I'm Suzanne Boyd. I'm the founder and CEO here at Anthro Tech, and we work with government and business teams that can't afford to guess about product design. And so we bring an approach to help them turn human insight into smarter decisions to reduce risk and deliver services that work for people and for the organizations trying to serve them. And our panelist here consists of three remarkable experts. Our presenter and resident continuous discovery expert is Esha Bhattacharya. She is our director of UX research. We are also joined by two forward-thinking leaders in the field of user experience research and design. So we have Kristen Kirsch and Rebecca Distello joining us. Esha, let's start with you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. I'm Esha Bhattacharya, and I've been with Anthro Tech for a little over 8 years. And in this time, I've seen how involving your users in the things that you build can be a real game changer. It helps teams create more successful products and services, and continuous discovery can be a great way of doing that.
Awesome. We're going to learn a lot about that. So how about Kristen? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Kirsch. I have been in the industry for about 10 years, managing and also conducting research across various different size companies and various different forms of interaction.
Great. Welcome. And over to you, Rebecca. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hey, y'all. I'm Rebecca Distello. I'm a senior research manager at Meta. I've been in research since 2011 and have gone through lots of different product spaces and worked in different, everything from startups to consultancies, tech, and healthcare. I'm also an affiliate lecturer at the University of Washington, where I teach in human-centered design and engineering. And I find that continuous discovery is really helpful in getting my team to move faster. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about my experience in it. Back to you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. All right, let's take a look at what we hope to cover today. Esha?
Okay. So now that we have the introductions out of the way, we will chat about what continuous discovery is and why it matters, some key strategies for bringing continuous discovery into your workflow, some real-world examples throughout from the field, and then we'll wrap it up with a Q&A session at the end.
Thank you, Esha. And everyone in the room here, we want to encourage you to just ask questions throughout the webinar. Don't feel like you have to wait till the Q&A period at the end. And let me jump a little bit in on the structure that we're going to follow today. Esha is going to be leading us through a couple of slides with foundational information around continuous discovery. And I will be facilitating some questions for our panelists, and they'll be sharing examples of their work. So there's a little bit of structure here, but also organic conversation happening. So let's get started.
All right. So what is continuous discovery? Continuous discovery is an ongoing, iterative approach to gathering user insights. So instead of doing research every few months, you build it into your weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly workflow. That might look like conducting quick usability studies, one-on-one interviews, going out and testing your concepts, a first click study, or it could even be a combination of a few of these things. You might be wondering, what are some benefits of continuous discovery? Why might we do it? So continuous discovery provides timely insights that gives designers, developers, engineers the confidence to know that they are building the right things and building the things right. So when you're aligning these timely insights with the work of a fast-moving team, you can ensure that teams have up-to-date insights to guide ongoing decisions. It also helps ensure product decisions are based on user feedback. So when you have too many options to choose from, continuous discovery can help you prioritize. You also make decisions that are not based on opinions and hunches, but rather real user data. This increases the chances of them succeeding. And continuous discovery aligns really well with Agile and Lean methodologies. So depending on your team structure and the cadence of your sprints, lightweight research can easily fit into existing workflows. There's no need to change how you work. Instead, you're fortifying how you make decisions. And finally, continuous discovery helps ensure that there's continuous learning and refinement throughout product development. So by testing early, often, and throughout the development process, you will have feedback loops to test and refine ideas. Refining before full development happens helps you avoid costly rework. So foundational research is very, very important, but it can take time to plan and execute. And while research teams are focused on these bigger projects, often product managers, designers, and content strategists might have questions about how their ideas and designs, how they change, and that might affect users. So those everyday improvements do not always need dedicated research, but they could always benefit from some research. And having something like continuous discovery in place assures the teams that they can test their ideas with actual users, not just with coworkers, which is often what we have to do when we don't have a lot of time. And additionally, continuous discovery can help you figure out what not to pursue when an idea is just an idea. So knowing this early can save a company thousands of dollars and team time.
Excellent. Thank you, Esha, for that overview. I'd like to bring in the panel here, maybe starting with you, Kristen. Do you have an example of how continuous discovery helped your team make better decisions?
Sure.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think
No worries.
one of the core examples and the best uses for continuous research a lot of the times is for content strategists. Deciding what content to be put into an application or even for voice interfaces and how people understand and react to that content is extremely difficult to do without feedback. And so continuous research really allows you to have a time and a space for that.
Great example. How about you, Rebecca? Any just real world examples of how continuous discovery helped your team, your product team, make better decisions or faster decisions?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up an example from when I was at a startup a few years back. And we were building a software tool that you load into your computer, and it took some time for you to understand how to use it. And we came to understand that we would need to create an onboarding process so that people could understand how to use this tool and how to get the most benefit from it right away. But if you've ever been through onboarding of any tool, you know it can be very complex or laborious. So we set up, I think it was like 5 weeks of continuous discovery, which I called it Witness Wednesdays, where we just like every Wednesday we brought in 5 participants who are in our target audience to help us test that latest iteration of onboarding for the tool. And then after that session was over, we'd do a quick recap with the design and product team to talk about like what needed to be changed. And we would do an iteration and then do the same thing again that next week. We did this for 5 weeks, and it helped us complete a very complex onboarding process that worked really well with our tool. I don't think we could have done that as quickly if we hadn't set up something like this. So it, one, helped us go fast. Two, it involved all of the stakeholders in the progress. So research was at the foundation of the changes we were making, which gave us a big seat at the table, which is oftentimes something that we're looking for. And three, helped us build an onboarding flow that really people understood and were okay going through, weren't just skipping through it. So that's how I've used this in the past.
That's a great example. It's like a triple win right there. So, Esha, I was intrigued when you said that sometimes continuous discovery can help you figure out what not to build, what features to maybe leave behind. And I'm curious if you or Kristen or Rebecca has an example of that where the research showed, let's not invest in that. We can come back to it. Something to mind.
Yeah, something to chew on while we talk about some more strategies.
I'll just jump in there really quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, Isha, I thought we were waiting for you to respond to that one. So it's been hard for me to do that in these like quick iterative tests, but I think finding like where the concept just did not resonate. We did concept testing in one of the companies I was working at, and this continuous discovery flow. And as it iterated up towards something more solid, we started to see signs that we were just not hitting the right mark for what our users needed from us. So it wasn't solving the problem that they had. And as we got closer to, that third iteration where it was like a more high fidelity prototype, it was that session that was like, okay, wait, we've missed the mark and somewhere we've kind of diverged. So we need to go back. So that was a really quick way for us to learn that without spending $1 developing out this, feature that just didn't find traction with our audience at all. We found out early on. And I have to say, like, yes, these are small iterative studies, but they help you get that kind of gut check to know if you're hitting the right direction for the problem identified through research. And it was hugely important and helpful for us in that moment.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great example, Rebecca. Thank you.
I was going to jump in as well, if that's okay. I was just thinking of an example from when I was doing voice interaction design while I was at Amazon, and we were designing an app to record information about new infants. So newborns, there's a lot of information that parents need to record, such as when you're feeding times, consistency of excrement, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that we did find was the words that we were using or that the designer had chosen were completely out of the lexicon of a adult who was not sleeping a lot and who was in that role itself. And so having kind of this 3 series of testing of how people would actually log this and how they would say it in a real life environment allowed us to really get that correct and to serve a population that was not cognitively, spot on all the times at that point.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kristen. Let's pivot a little bit and talk more about how you actually implement continuous discovery and get it going in an organization.
Okay, so we'll talk about a few different strategies. The strategies are, first one is integrate continuous discovery into your current Agile workflow. The second one is prioritize continuous discovery throughout development. And the third one is to ensure continuous discovery is accessible to your teams. So let's start with the first one. You can integrate continuous discovery into your current Agile workflows in a few different ways. You can include research into sprints and decision making. So insert continuous discovery into your Agile project timelines. Don't just do that at the beginning, sprinkle it throughout. Collect feedback with minimal disruptions. So a common critique of research is that it takes time and product teams don't have the time to wait. So with continuous discovery, you're not disrupting the product development flow, you're supporting it. And you can also scale continuous discovery to a size that makes sense for ongoing quick feedback that is still impactful. And use research methods that provide ongoing insights. So use simple methods. For instance, you can use a one-on-one interview to gauge reactions to an idea. Or you can learn about pain points through simple concept testing without investing in a very complex prototype. And sometimes you might even combine several different topics in a single session. Let's see, thanks. Suzanne wants to ask us a question.
Yeah, I think maybe starting with Rebecca on this one. You work in an organization that's very fast paced, and time to market with features matters. So what helps you make this work in a fast moving environment like an organization that you're part of right now?
Yeah. And I think I also want to add that I have a small team. So the team that I do have, we want them on foundational research for the most part, because we have big questions that we're trying to answer in our org. But, we still need to answer the question of like, okay, now that we've built it, do people know how to use it? Or did we build the right thing? Like there's tactical research we need to complete that we don't have the capacity for. So I set up a program late last year that helped us do both. Making sure that we have resourcing toward this continuous discovery process, which we refer to as rapid research at Meta. And, helping to funnel some of those like quick asks or like design questions that people have on our teams into this program has helped us take the weight off of my small research team and increase our resourcing because we have this program. I think it's really important that the research team does have a program in place that helps us answer both types of questions. So this has been super helpful for us in the work that we're doing and has unblocked us in lots of different ways. But I think, structure is important. So figuring out like where things go, which research questions go in which way, and then having it very easy for our product partners to access it and use it is really key to being successful.
Right. What about you, Kristen? What's your experience trying to make this work, setting this up in a fast-paced environment?
Yeah, I was thinking about that while Rebecca was talking, and I think a lot of the times when I've set them up, the first thing I try to take into account is actually the knowledge and experience that my stakeholders have with research, because that really allows me to understand how much investment or support they're going to give to foundation or tactical research, as well as maybe requests that they have. So some organizations that I've been in, I've gone in and their experience with the research has only been tactical. And so we've set up a program like rolling research right away. And then we've sprinkled in kind of more longitudinal questions into the rolling research that then is collected over time, that then inspires why don't we do a study about this? Or kind of you have other organizations that are a little more farther along in terms of their experience with research and understanding, where you'll have so much that you need to do, and you want to support teams and not turn them away. And so you need to figure out ways in which you can have a place for these smaller asks to go in a systematic, structured way for them to give those requests to you and get actionable insights back from them. That is in a predictable time frame.
Yeah. And I know both of you have overseen numerous rapid research programs, and I imagine that it's not always smooth sailing trying to get support for a program like that off the ground. So my question is, have you experienced any barriers to getting started with that? And if so, do you have any tips for overcoming those barriers and obstacles?
It's Chris, I could just see you like it's around the like you're ready to say something. So I don't want to interrupt.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were going to speak first. I was just going to say that, yes, there's the cost barrier is the number one thing, especially if you're at organizations that do not have a large budget or a budget at all. So there are ways to allocate. If you have one researcher, think about your time allocation and maybe allocate 10-50% of your time to try to set up something similar, or depending on the needs. There's also the flip side, where if you are the sole researcher and you're trying to advocate for budget, using some of your larger foundational studies as kind of a teasing ground to kind of give product managers and stakeholders a taste of what that rapid research could look like. So allocating, let's say, 10 minutes or less of a 60-minute session to give, this other team a little taste so that they can then advocate on your behalf for it. Because it is a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think, Kristen, you're mentioning budget because oftentimes they'll bring a vendor in to help support this kind of work. But in absence of a budget, I do exactly the same thing you're talking about, Kristen, like carving out a part of your time in your studies to include that kind of more tactical questions so that your stakeholders can see like why that's important. And oftentimes your stakeholders really only know about those tactical research methods because they've seen feasibility testing or most usually like a focus group, right? Yeah. It's like, here's all the, if we open up a channel to be able to funnel all the questions in and help our team move forward. I think one thing that's really important here is having a roadmap, which is basically just a list of all the research asks that have come into your team or your org to say like, hey, here are all the research questions we have to answer. And here are the prioritization for each of those questions. Here's what's falling below the line. And oftentimes the technical research asks fall below the line. And so you can say like, hey, if we don't support these things, then it's a possibility that we could be launching something that doesn't work and we're not going to get our tests correct, right? So if you do like an A/B test with data science and they say like, here's version 1, here's version 2, and if version 1 is the current and version 2 is like the updated and the UI is wonky or people don't know how to use it, they haven't, right? You're not going to get a clean read from that because maybe people just couldn't use it. Maybe they didn't understand. You try to understand what is the motivation of your stakeholders, like what are they trying to achieve, and then speak to those motivations. That's another tactic I've used. But sometimes it's just, finding that ally and helping them understand what you're trying to achieve, and then getting the ally to also promote this for you.
Yeah. Right. And this brings up other questions for me, which I'll wait for the Q&A, which is, I'll post it, but you don't have to answer it until later, which is, how do you keep track of all those research questions from different product teams? What's the process for prioritization? But we're going to keep going back to Esha.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, let's look at our second strategy. So you can prioritize continuous discovery throughout development. We just talked about that. But identifying friction points in your product or ideas can go a long way. Identify what is not working. Identify areas you're curious about and want to learn more about it. Prioritize which ones are most important to address first, and figure out where folks are in their product timeline. So what teams are being affected? What curiosities do those teams have about these friction points? Test and refine product features based on real-time responses. So actively make product changes based on user feedback. This one time, we were working with a team of product managers, data engineers, and designers, and they noticed that users were clicking on a call to action, but immediately abandoned it right after. They wanted to fix this. And analytics told them what's happening, but they didn't tell them why. So in situations like this, something like rolling research and continuous discovery can be great tools for gaining a qualitative understanding of why we are seeing a particular user behavior. Make informed choices. So ensure product teams make informed choices at every stage based on the discovery that was made. So instead of making changes for the sake of making changes, use continuous discovery and user feedback.
Excellent. So let's say we have our continuous discovery program in place, up and running. I'd like to learn more from our panelists about the benefits of sticking with a program like that, prioritizing these insights rolling in. So starting with you, Rebecca, what are some of the benefits of continuous discovery when working with product teams? You've touched on some of them already, but...
Yeah, I think the big two for me is always that you are increasing capacity for your research team. So that means like you can answer a lot more questions with your research team than you could before because you've created this like extra capacity that can handle all the additional asks that come in. And that just kind of accidentally or on purpose helps you get more buy-in for the research that your team's doing, because there's more studies, there's more impact that people can see that comes out of your research program. And by program, I mean how you've set up, how you do research in your team or your org. Those are the two big ones I've found. And like time and time again, when I've joined teams or orgs that don't have a program in place and I set something like this up, it makes a huge difference for buy-in, makes a huge difference for the amount of impact my team can have on our product strategy and the direction that we're taking these things in. So I do it every time. It's like I have a playbook, land on a team, checklist, I'll have these things in place. No, you're missing this one thing. Okay, let's open this up and get to work. So those are the two big benefits I see.
Right. A lot less guessing too, I imagine. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Kristen?
No.
Okay.
No, actually, sorry. I will say that I think a benefit of having the structure is one of the things that I've always done in these structures is have like a office hours time. So the run up to the actual study is very structured. The expectations are put into place. And then you have an office hour time where the product team can come and talk to you about their idea instead of maybe just filling out a form. So if they need help or that extra kind of mile of maybe it's their first time, having that structure and building in that one-on-one time is really important to teach or coach your stakeholders so that you can run it smoothly over time.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kristen. Oh, sorry, Esha. I was just going to say +1 to that, because it helps. Sometimes you land on these teams where your stakeholders don't really understand how to work with research. They have this resource, but they don't know how to include it. And having a structure set up like that gives them something to follow to understand how to use research. And then I thought of something else that's a benefit, which is like a major one, is it's a myth buster, right? It shows one of the big myths about research is that it takes too long. If you have these sort of like continuous discovery points every, once a week, biweekly, a monthly, or whatever it is you set up, you can get through the space so quick. Like the questions, you have it set up so it's like, okay, you did research on this day. The next day you're doing report out. The next day you're doing iteration. You're setting up for the week after. So it's just helping your team get so much more traction with people getting involved in the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Which I was going to add, which is a positive because it grows your sphere of influence. So it's like this natural multiplier. But that I think that then goes to your next question, Suzanne. You get more and more people asking for support. And so it's great because everyone wants you, and this is like spreading, but then you're stuck with all these requests or these needs. And so I think that's where the prioritization starts coming in and thinking about how do you provide more support so that you don't just get stuck doing that.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm curious, maybe Esha, we've heard that myth before of like, it takes too long to do the research. In general, or any of the panelists, how long is the cycle of, prioritizing research question, doing the study design, running it, results? Just on average.
I hate to say this, but it depends.
Your answer.
Right. Depends on like what the question is that you're asking, the methods you're going to use. But I think for this particular methodology of this like rapid research or continuous discovery, once you get the program set up of like how it's going to work, you brought this up, like having office hours, maybe even you have like a research request form and office hours. That's what I have on my team. And then you have like set dates where it's like a kickoff, like on Monday with the product team and whoever is responsible for the designs with like whoever's doing the research. And then there's another checkpoint sometime that week to like, check through what the research is going to be like what kind of questions you're asking. And then that next week you do the research. And by the end of that week, you're reporting out. So I've seen these take anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks to like beginning to end with getting the research request and reporting it back out. It's one of the reasons we call it rapid research at Meta. It's just like so quick. You're like getting through stuff very quickly. But, I think for this, I'd say 1 to 2 weeks. It's a really quick process.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. So before we move into our third and last strategy, I actually have a question for today. We talked about continuous discovery as a way to test your assumptions. So if you had a magic wand and you had a program starting tomorrow, what's the one assumption about the users that you're serving, your customers, that you would just love to test right now? And go ahead and just put it in the chat. And Kristen, Rebecca, if you have an assumption you're about to test in your organization, feel free to contribute. All right. Something comes to mind, feel free to share. Let's go to our third strategy.
Right. So our third strategy for today is ensure continuous discovery is accessible to your team. Centralize insights. Make information accessible for all teams so they know where to find insights and how to understand them. Include other teams. Set aside time to invite other teams that may be curious into the continuous discovery process. Show them examples of work that was previously done, and that can be really helpful for them. Discuss discovery improvements. So make it a regular practice to review how continuous discovery is going so the work remains relevant and useful for teams. So there are really two key benefits to making continuous discovery accessible. First, raising awareness about the continuous discovery program. This helps build an organization or team's muscle of using research to make decisions. And involving more teams and sharing research across them lowers the chances of team members working in silos, which in turn prevents teams from researching the same problem.
So another question for our panelists here. When have you seen a project succeed in making continuous discovery accessible to all of its team members? Kristen, you talked earlier about the more you get things rolling, it kind of snowballs. More and more people are interested in getting their research questions tested. So what have you done to get that momentum, to raise that awareness about the program in your organizations?
Yeah. I think, the best thing is word of mouth, right? Like kind of free advertising. So when you get the PMs or other stakeholders to watch a session and really get excited about it, they'll usually tell others. Another way is in trying to make sure that you're not duplicating research and being in contact with other researchers on other teams or other parts of an organization, bringing them in and try to include some questions they might have will then impact their team. And that also kind of grows that sphere of influence. So really training up and supporting your other researchers, if possible, is another way of having that grow outwards.
Great. Rebecca, anything to add to Kristen's thoughts there?
No, I agree with her. I think one of the benefits of doing this is just that actually one of the ways to get benefits is to think through like a research marketing plan. That's what I refer to it as, is like you're sitting down thinking through like, okay, I have these research questions. Like, is there a way I can help other teams through my work? Because so often, especially really big product orgs, there's some overlap in the product spaces that you're working in. So involving other people and helping them understand the work that you're doing to see like, is there a question I can answer for you? Because as a researcher, you're just, all the work that you do should have an impact. Something that comes out of your work should change something that your org, your team, or whoever is doing. So trying to expand your sphere of influence by marketing your research insights before you even get started to help involve other people in the work that you're doing is hugely helpful in the success of the research impact. The other thing that I like to do is have my team publish research roll-ups. So with the insights you gain from this method along with your foundational work is to look back every month to say like, here's what we learned over this last month and here's what's happened with those learnings so far. And here's still some open opportunities that we need to tackle. And then this is what we're going to do next month. So you're constantly making your work visible to others. It's so important to do that in order to continuously get buy-in for the work that's happening and build out a robust research program that's supported within your org. And the last thing is like sharing your setup. So, I mentioned research programs. Doing this, it's really important to have like a structure in place for how research happens. Sharing that with others so they can be successful is also really helpful, and it helps your work resonate more than just within your team. It gets distributed outside as well. So just thinking through like how can you make a difference in other people's lives at work and their project teams and things like that is like really important for me and my team.
That's great. Thank you, Rebecca. Brings up another question in terms of sharing insights. When you do this in your organizations, do you keep a repository of everything you learn so that you're not revisiting the same research question over and over again? How's that work?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Kristen, you can identify with this. Like, this is a never ending quest. Like, how do we build a repository that is easy to use for the researchers who are adding their research findings to it and easy for others to access? I've not yet seen a repository that works really well for both users, and the users being the researchers and stakeholders. There's like two users there. When I was at Google, I did this basically just Google Slides where I just took my team's TLDR, like the too long didn't read slides from their decks, and just put them into the deck itself. Like, so I had this big long running deck of all these TLDR slides. So you could just go in and do a keyword search to find out anytime we'd done research on a particular space or product space. And that was probably the most simple solution that I found to sharing research insights. And of course, each one of those slides had a link to the full report out. But there's Airtable now that is also trying to solve this problem, and lots of other types of repositories out there. But yeah, I haven't gone. This could be a whole other webinar that we could be talking.
Yeah. A quick way to do it a lot of times is whenever I've joined a team or been starting a team or had a new teammate join, is having them do an evergreen lit review if there isn't an evergreen lit review in that area or that topic, or depending on how small or wide it is. And it's evergreen because then every time you're doing a study within whatever that topic is, that then gets added into the literature review. And so you have this running list, but that tends to be more used than by researchers.
Yep. Great. Well, I would like to open it up to Q&A right now. We are doing great on time. And so anyone in the audience here, you can pop your questions in the chat or just come off mute. I do see some familiar faces. We have these amazing experts here. So let's hear your questions.
I have a question about building sort of an internal culture around this. How do you get people on board, or for instance, other departments involved and things like that, breaking down some barriers? Just how do you get that started?
Kristen, you kind of touched on this earlier, where you're like, the first test is free, essentially, or the first taste is free, right? You give them a little so they knew what they're going to get. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was trying to think about with the question how to structure the answer, but
okay.
Sorry. I think no, it's okay. I think that again, I hate saying this depends on the maturity of research at the organization that you're at, because if you're starting from zero, right, then you just have to start from really deciding like where's your lowest hanging fruit and the team that seems open to work with you to get them introduced to the idea of what you're doing, versus someone that's had a taste of it before. So as I said before, like giving them a taste of what in a longer longitudinal study of what rolling research or concept or tactical research could be, allows them to then get them excited about potentially the program that you can set up over time.
Thank you. Super helpful. I have one other quick question. How do you pick which research project to start with?
That gets to the prioritization question. So
Yeah.
we get like a lot of interest in your organization, maybe across multiple product teams for the program, and questions are coming in, and you've established that sort of data-driven decision making. How do you like prioritize what goes in each round of testing?
Yeah. Kristen, sorry, you were gonna say
No, go for it. Go for it.
no. I was gonna say that I'm like very passionate about road mapping, and actually have some talks about road mapping that I've done at different conferences, because I think it's so important for research to have a plan, and have it aligned with the stakeholders that they're working with. Usually my tactic when I first land on a team is to go on a listening tour, and I go and meet like all the shot callers, right? Like who's the head PM, the head engineer, data science, product management, product design. And I find out what's their experience been working with research, both good and bad in the past. And that helps me know like things they just are not going to be able to tolerate, and then things that they're going to constantly hold me and my team to. Like there's so many examples where I'll meet with somebody who says like, I had this researcher who took me on an immersion in, whatever cool country, and I learned so much about those users. That was the best researcher I ever worked with, and it's like, oh boy, I'm going to have to live up to that researcher. But like, finding out like what was it specifically that helped you, and it's always like, I just got to learn more about the user. Like that's always the case, right? Then there's the ones that they didn't have such a good experience, maybe with like it being slow or research going off into like a black box and then coming back and saying, ta-da, here's the answer to the question you had. Those are always things that I hear from people that didn't have good experiences. So like once you've got that down, then knowing what's been keeping them up at night about the product, like what's the thing you're afraid of that will happen with this product if we don't get it right, is such a great question to ask, because you start to understand their priority in their mind. And you can come back to them with your research roadmap and say like, hey, I heard your question, and it's a great one. Like, let's talk about when we might be able to get this done. And you're meeting with the entire team in one room after you've collected all these research questions and insights. And you're saying like, here's the list of all the research questions. Here's some rough prioritization that I think we should be thinking about, but I need your feedback. So really at that point, you're asking your stakeholders to help you with the prioritization. And if you have them all in the same room, that means that there's consensus at the end of that meeting of which thing goes first in your research roadmap. And research roadmaps, by the way, I just use like a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet. And it's basically just like, what is the question you're trying to answer? Who's the audience that you need to talk to? When are you going to get it done? And like links to the artifacts. So like your plan, the results once it's done, etc. So like whatever detail you need to help keep yourself on track. Really, this is where the project management comes in, is like being very, very thorough and planful about how you're doing this research. And then sharing that product roadmap. Every time you publish research, you can say like, want to know more? Here's a link to my product roadmap. However you're publishing that, like, so people have visibility to it. There's never a question about, what is Rebecca off doing this week? Like they know they've got access to the roadmap. So I could go on and on for the next 15 minutes. So please just stop me, Suzanne.
No, I'm just going to say this is another really great topic to talk about is product roadmaps. So I like how it helps you stay grounded to what's more important for the road for that product, and how to tie the rolling research to that and what you're going to focus on as a way to prioritize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, sorry, just really quickly, a plug for Anthro Tech, because I worked at Anthro Tech for a little bit, and Suzanne, I learned product road mapping through working with your team, like in the way that we worked with you. Like that's where I learned that methodology, and I can't live without it now. So it's just like being very, very visible with the work that you're doing and getting continuous alignment with your stakeholders. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was going to say it also, you just brought up a memory, Rebecca, of doing that exact approach. And then I was sitting in a room of product managers with the product manager director, and all of them starting to argue about whose work was more important with the product director. and me just sitting there going like, well, it sounds like people need to talk. And it was the best thing ever because I didn't, I was like, here are all the things. And now like we get to really get the product team to decide and have value in what they're spending for research.
Yeah. And in that way, you're taking the responsibility of the prioritization off your shoulders. Because really, I mean, we might have an idea of what should be done. And sometimes my team will go off and do research that our stakeholders don't think we need yet, but then we need it like 6 months later. And they're like, what if we did this thing? You're like, oh, we've already done research on that. Here are your answers. But I think, the way that I think about our stakeholders is that they're our users of the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So going out to ask, like, what are their pain points? What are their wants and needs? How do they want that work to come back to them? And developing the program around that so that you're serving them. That's the key to success, I swear. It's so helpful. And then you don't have to there's a lot of hard calls that have to be made in research. And when you've got your team invested in the work that you're doing, your product team, it takes a lot of the pressure off of you yourself because there's a committee that's making those decisions with you.
Yeah.
This reminded me of an example of this instance when we were partnering with an organization where we were supporting a lot of different teams through the same rolling research program. And one thing that helped decide who gets priority is who's waiting to get their own work done based on the research. So this one time we had developers were waiting, engineers were waiting to do something till they hear how that particular concept does. So that easily put them up on the list of we need to get them the findings because without that, they cannot go on to the next thing. So sometimes that level of detail can also help prioritize.
Yeah, that's one of the things we think about when we're prioritizing our work is like, when does this have to be completed? Like, what are you gonna do with it? And then when are you gonna do it? Depending on like when they're actually going to work on it will help us understand the prioritization of that thing too. But there are lots of other factors that go into prioritization for research. One of them is like risk to the user. If we don't do this work, what's going to happen with our users? Like, are they going to get harmed somehow? Risk to the business. Like what happens if we don't do this research? Get to the business end of the user. I think another one is, do we already know anything about this space? Like, do we have research that we can pull from and use already? Or is this new research that we need to do? And then there's a few others. I have it in the whole road mapping talk. If you want to do another webinar on road mapping, I'm happy to join that one.
Let's do it. I see some interest in potential examples. And there's a great question in the chat here from Chantel. I'm going to read it, but if you want to read with me, in my organization, there is a desire and need for research with lots of research questions. However, our research process takes quite a bit of time, and we are working on building the structure to build a rapid research program. However, what is the minimal structure needed in place to get this off the ground? Since we struggle, we designate time to building the program while also doing strategic research projects. How do you find that balance between the continuous discovery and the more generative research? That's also really important. So any advice for Chantel here? And Chantel, feel free to come off mute if you want to add anything to this.
You did great, Suzanne. Thank you.
I mean, I think this is a perfect example of I don't know how much time you have right now, but if you really are strapped where you don't have the time to even set up the structure, maybe, again, either elongating your qualitative or the larger studies that you're doing and starting to add them in there first until you get more support is probably the way to go. That's going to really, in order to do that, you're really going to have to be very specific about your prioritization of who's getting that maybe one spot for that, rapid iterative research that you do.
Yeah, and I think having a roadmap is going to be key to that success. Because if you just have that one spot, you're going to need to do some alignment with your team on what's the most important thing that we need to bring into that session. But I think, Kristen, you mentioned this earlier, having office hours, which is basically just having an hour held at the same time every week on your calendar and making sure people know about it. and then just going and waiting, checking your email and whatever while you're waiting, but like helping people get in there to ask you questions about like what the research is that you're doing, what questions they have, and how you might be able to help them to gain that support for like eventually having a program like this in place where you're balancing both the tactical and the foundational. It takes time. And sometimes it takes like late nights getting the program together. But once you have it in place, like it's just like plug and play. So yeah, we've done this. Like I've done this lots of times on I've been on a bunch of different teams at Meta, and everyone, like the first time we did it, it took a lot of lifting to figure out like, how do we put this in place and what's the structure we want to have for it. But then once we establish that, I just copy and paste every new team that I'm on and we're doing this. It's like the same part. It's super easy to do. So a little bit of work, extra work in the beginning, but once you've got it, it's easy to do.
Yeah. You can also have like spots for people to sign up for in your office hours too, if that helps. So, making sure you might have 2 hours a week at different times to make it accessible, and have those spots so that they can come and maybe preset questions they can answer.
Yeah, and honestly, I gotta say, I've got office hours on my team, but even though everybody knows about it, they still set up just direct time with me on the calendar. Like I get these half-hour requests for like research reviews, but I'm like, y'all know I have office hours, right? But I just accept them because I want my team to like have greater buy-in in the org that I'm in. We're still working on that. So I just take what I can get.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we're winding down here. So I want to thank our panelists, but also I'd love to hear one more question here. What is the one takeaway that you hope people leave with today about continuous discovery? And let's start with Esha.
Let's see. I think the important thing, at least for me, is that continuous discovery can take the guesswork out of product enhancement, and it can create a culture of making data-driven decisions. It's really rewarding when you have your product team speak your language and say, I want research on this, because they don't want to make the decisions on behalf of the users and they are really bought into the process.
Great. Kristen.
I think that one of the great things about it is actually the quality of research doesn't have to go down when you're doing tactical work, when you have this kind of system in place, because you've created so many guardrails and specific time and process to set up the research so well. So you can get high quality tactical research that it can be very meaningful for growing research influence across the org.
Wonderful. How about you, Rebecca?
I love that, Kristen. I think the takeaway I want people to take away is that out of everything that you do as a researcher, alignment and buy-in is like the number one thing to have in place. And with putting together a program like this, where you're balancing out your foundational and tactical research portfolio, that's a really great way to get buy-in, and a really great way to continue buy-in is by having this. So I'd say whatever you do, think through like your users are your stakeholders, and addressing their needs and wants and being able to scale yourself and your team is really important to alignment and buy-in. So think about all that when you've left. And if you have questions still, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can answer questions further.
Great. We're going to get to that piece. I want to leave everyone here with this quote on the next slide, which is, customer conversations are the key to building a product that people actually want, not just what you think they might want. So to me, this quote really captures the heart of continuous discovery. It's not about guessing what your customers want or need. It's about knowing. And through ongoing research and experimentation, conversations, constant learning. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you to our panelists for their insights. And on the next slide, you'll see a little QR code. If you want to, I saw a question from Maddie about maybe getting a template, or if you want to just chat further about continuous discovery. If you scan that QR code, give us your name, we'll follow up. We're also going to follow up with all of you with a recording of today's webinar, but feel free to use that sort of QR code as a way to get in touch with us. And I can get you in connection with Kristen and Rebecca and Esha as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Esha.
Thanks, Anthro Tech.
you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for coming.
Take care.